Eddie Murphy's rise to fame is one of the most electrifying stories in entertainment history.
How old are you?
I am 47.
Let's see, you look 29.
But behind the jokes, the movies, and the megawatt smile lies a trail of fiery feuds that defined entire eras of Hollywood. From explosive backstage clashes on Saturday Night Live to icy rivalries with comedy legends and Hollywood royalty, Eddie has never shied away from drama. His comedic genius often came with sharp edges, and in an industry built on egos and image, that led to some unforgettable battles. These feuds weren't just petty Hollywood gossip. They shaped careers, altered trajectories, and in some cases, burned bridges so thoroughly that reconciliation became impossible. In the early 1980s, Saturday Night Live was in crisis. The original cast had left, ratings were tanking, and critics were calling the show a dying relic. Then came a 19-year-old Eddie Murphy. Within weeks, he became the heartbeat of SNL. His characters like Buckwheat and Mr. Robinson didn't just get laughs, they saved the show. But that sudden dominance bred resentment. Cast members who'd been struggling for airtime suddenly found themselves sidelined by a teenager. Some crew members reportedly felt Eddie's confidence bordered on arrogance. He wasn't just performing sketches, he was rewriting the show's energy in real time. Tensions boiled over between Eddie and Joe Piscopo, another prominent cast member. At first, they were allies. Eddie's star power and Joe's impressions made them the core of the early 80s SNL revival. But as Eddie's movie career exploded with hits like 48 Hours and Trading Places, he became less involved in the ensemble spirit that SNL traditionally valued. Rumors swirled that Piscopo resented how Eddie overshadowed everyone. Eddie, meanwhile, thought the show was dragging him down. The moment that defined this rift came when Eddie returned to host SNL in 1984 while still a cast member, an unprecedented move. It made clear to everyone that Eddie was no longer one of the cast. He was the star. The SNL drama didn't end there. Years later, in the mid-1990s, the show made a jab at Eddie during a Weekend Update segment, calling his career in the toilet. Eddie, who had by then become a box office icon with Beverly Hills Cop and Coming to America, didn't take it lightly. He was furious, not because of the joke itself, but because it came from the very institution he had helped rescue. He saw it as betrayal. For decades, he refused to return to the show, skipping anniversaries and reunions. It wasn't until 2015, after personal outreach from SNL alumni, that he finally stepped back on the stage for the show's 40th anniversary special. Even then, his appearance was brief and subdued, a reminder of wounds that never fully healed. Eddie's comedy also collided head-on with other titans. One of the most notorious feuds of his early career was with Bill Cosby. At the height of his fame, Cosby was America's wholesome dad, hosting The Cosby Show and lecturing young comedians on keeping their material clean. Eddie's stand-up specials like Delirious and Raw were the opposite, raunchy, provocative, and wildly unfiltered. Cosby reportedly called Eddie to criticize his language and comedic style, essentially telling him he was setting a bad example. Eddie didn't take kindly to being scolded by an elder he didn't respect. Years later, in Raw, Eddie roasted Cosby in front of sold-out arenas, mocking the phone call and exposing Cosby's holier-than-thou attitude to millions. The feud took on a darker, almost poetic twist decades later. As Cosby's sexual assault allegations surfaced and his public image collapsed, Eddie used his 2015 Mark Twain Prize acceptance speech to take one last jab. After years of silence, he impersonated Cosby on stage, joking, "Bill has one of those faces. You just look at him and go, yeah, you're guilty." It was a moment of cultural reversal, the once scolded young comedian now standing triumphant as the moral facade of his critic shattered. Richard Pryor was another giant whose path intersected with Eddie's, sometimes explosively. Pryor was Eddie's idol, the comedian whose work made Eddie believe that stand-up could be raw, real, and revolutionary. But admiration turned complicated as Eddie's career soared. Pryor's inner circle, including his manager and lover Jennifer Lee Pryor, claimed that Pryor alternated between supporting Eddie and resenting him. When Eddie became a box office juggernaut, some in Pryor's camp accused him of stealing Richard's style and commercializing it. Eddie, for his part, saw himself as the next step in Pryor's legacy, not a copy. There were icy moments backstage at clubs, passive-aggressive remarks in interviews, and whispered rivalries over who truly ruled the comedy world. Pryor's struggles with addiction and health eventually cooled the feud, but it lingered in the public imagination. Two comedic titans, one blazing the trail and the other racing past. Eddie also had run-ins with Hollywood royalty outside of the comedy world. One of his lesser-known feuds involved David Spade in the mid-1990s. At the time, Eddie's career was going through a rough patch with a string of box office flops. Spade, then a cast member on SNL, delivered a sarcastic Hollywood Minute segment in which he showed a photo of Murphy and quipped, "Look, children, it's a falling star. Make a wish." The joke humiliated Eddie, and he called Spade furiously afterward, warning him never to disrespect him again. Eddie later explained that it wasn't just the joke. It was the history with SNL and the feeling that the show he once carried was now mocking him like he was disposable. The feud haunted Spade for years, and though they eventually moved on publicly, it marked one of the most infamous comedic call-outs of the 1990s. Another major clash emerged with Mel B, the former Spice Girl, during their tumultuous relationship in the mid-2000s. Their romance was intense but brief, ending abruptly when Mel became pregnant. Eddie publicly questioned the paternity of the child during a television interview, a move that stunned the entertainment world and caused a media storm. DNA tests later confirmed he was the father. The public nature of the feud, involving accusations, legal battles, and tabloid drama, painted Eddie in a controversial light at a time when his career was trying to shift into more family-friendly roles with films like Shrek and Daddy Daycare. Even with Hollywood institutions, Eddie had complicated relationships. During his time as one of the highest-paid stars of the 1980s and 1990s, Eddie's refusal to play the traditional Hollywood PR game rubbed some studio executives and press figures the wrong way. He rarely did talk shows, often skipped award circuits, and demanded creative control over his films. This sometimes put him at odds with powerful producers and executives who were used to more compliant stars. His feud with the Academy Awards is a case in point. In 1988, he was invited to present Best Picture, but instead gave a scathing mini-speech criticizing Hollywood for overlooking black talent. Nearly 2 decades later, he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Dreamgirls and was considered the frontrunner. When he lost to Alan Arkin, he walked out of the ceremony before it ended, making headlines. In recent years, Eddie has mellowed, reflecting on some of these conflicts with humor and perspective. He's returned to SNL, patched things up with some old colleagues, and focused on legacy rather than battles. But the stories of his feuds endure because they weren't superficial squabbles. They were emblematic of Eddie's meteoric rise, his refusal to be controlled, and the cultural power he wielded. Whether sparring with comedy legends like Cosby and Pryor, clashing with SNL over respect, or tangling with Hollywood institutions, Eddie Murphy's career has been shaped as much by confrontation as by comedy. What makes his feuds so legendary is that they reveal the raw, unfiltered personality behind the polished performances. Eddie never played the role of the humble newcomer or the obedient star. He was audacious, sharp, and unwilling to bow to anyone, not even his idols. In a business built on hierarchy and image that made him both magnetic and polarizing, his rivalries became cultural moments, sparking debates about comedy, race, fame, and respect. And even today, when Eddie walks onto a stage, there's a sense that beneath the smooth laughter, there's still a fighter who once went toe-to-toe with Hollywood's biggest names and came out with a legacy that few can match.